With the recent Democratic convention and VP running mate announcement, I thought it was time to take a look at just how corrupted the way we elect the president and the vice president has become. So we'll discuss this next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. We teach the rising generation to be free. I am glad you could join me. Again, please head to that website, constitutionstudy.com. Releasing a couple new products up there. It's where you can sign up for the newsletter, find out what I'm working on. I only send out an announcement once a month, unless something spectacular happens. But you can also check the box and have this material delivered directly to your inbox without worrying about Google, Facebook, or anyone else getting in the way. Also, I'm putting together some new classes, some new in-person events I'm trying to work on. So if you have any interest, please contact me through the website. I look forward to hearing from you. And with that, let's talk about the presidential election process. As a boy, I learned about the presidential elections partially from school and, well, partially by observation. It wasn't until decades later that I learned how the process is legally supposed to work, and just how much of what I had been taught was wrong and how corrupted the process has become. Let's look at some examples. Now, if there's one piece of misinformation I hear repeated more often than any other, it is the idea that the American people elect the president. They do not. Quoting from Article 2, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. You see, the states choose electors in the manner determined by the state's legislature, and it is those electors who vote for president. Now today, every state appoints electors based on a popular vote within that state. All but two states, Maine and Nebraska, appoint electors on a winner-take-all basis. That means all of the electors appointed are those who have promised to vote for whoever won the popular vote in that state. So to everyone who complains about the Electoral College and the winner-take-all system, I hope you recognize that is not a problem with the U.S. Constitution, but with your state's legislature. Now, I've written several articles about the Electoral College and recent attempts to get rid of it, and I'll put some links in the descriptions below if you want to find out more. Now that we have a common understanding of how the President of the United States is supposed to be elected, let's look at some of the corruption of the process from recent news. On August 11th, Democratic candidate for the office of President Joe Biden announced his choice of Kamala Harris to be his vice presidential running mate. There's just one problem. The Constitution of the United States does not allow for a presidential ticket like the ones being promoted by the political parties. From Amendment 12, the electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballot the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots, the person voted for as vice president. And they shall make distinct lists of all persons voted for as president, and of all persons voted for as vice president, and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. Now, originally, the vice president was actually the first runner-up in the presidential election. This quickly became a problem in our third election when the winner was John Adams, a Federalist, and the runner-up was Thomas Jefferson, an Anti-Federalist. To minimize the chance of that happening again, the Constitution was amended to have the vice presidential election be separate and distinct from the presidential one. Yet today you, through your choice of electors, you know, the person you choose to represent your state in the presidential election, you are not given a choice. See, the political parties have taken that choice out of your hands and given it to the presidential candidate, or more likely the party itself. What if you do not think the choice of the presidential candidate for vice president is the best one? What if you want to vote for Joe Biden but think Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren would be better vice presidential candidate? Too bad. You see, you're not allowed to make that choice. Just look at your ballot. You can only choose electors that will vote for the ticket, not the individuals. The American people, through their states, no longer have a real choice in the vice president of the United States. That decision has been given to the presidential candidate with tremendous influence from the political party. Speaking of the influence of political parties, as I record this video, The Democratic Party is holding their national convention to formally nominate Joe Biden as their presidential candidate. Next week, the Republican Party will do the same for Donald Trump, and I'm sure other smaller parties are doing the same thing around this time as well. Again, there's just one problem. You see, the primary and convention process is not in the Constitution, and it serves to limit the choices of the American people. Quoting George Washington from his farewell address, "The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purpose of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty. It serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another, foments occasionally riot and insurrection. It opens the door to foreign influences and corruption, which finds a facilitated access to the government itself through the channels of party passions. Thus the policy and the will of the country are subject to the policy and will of another." Over 200 years ago, our first president warned us about the spirit of party. He warned that their spirit of revenge would lead to the most frightful and permanent despotism, that the problems which result from their discord would lead the people to seek security in the absolute power of the leader of one of the factions, the political parties, and be the ruin of our liberty. Mr. Washington's predictions have come true, and no greater example can be found than the current presidential election process, embodied in the phrase that you must choose the, quote, lesser of two evils. First, we need to recognize that political parties are not public entities. They are private organizations, no different than Greenpeace, the National Rifle Association, or your local social club. Yet you are paying for their elections so these private organizations can promote their champions for office. Not just the office of president, but pretty much every elected office in the nation, all the way down to your local dog catcher. There are probably tens of thousands of organizations, many of which have political goals in their charter. But only these select few are given the privilege of having the American taxpayer not only pay for their elections, but pay for the privilege of having their choices limited to the people these groups choose. I'm sure most Americans know that they can write in any name they want on a ballot, but very few even know how. When you walk into the voting booth, you are presented with a list of approved candidates, those that you're expected to choose from. Yes, in most cases, a party's candidate was chosen by a primary, but we've seen over the last few cycles that this process is frequently manipulated by the party leaders to get the candidate they think has the best chance to win the election. Notice, not the best person for the job, but the person their group thinks has the best chance to win the election, regardless of their qualifications. However, why should your choices be limited to what other people think? Shouldn't we all be free to vote for the candidate for office we think is best? Let's take a look at this from the point of view of the candidate. If you want a chance at winning anything but the most local of offices, you need to join a political party. Now, this party will want you to adopt all of their platform positions, and whether you support them or not. The party will also want you to support other candidates from your party, regardless of whether you think they are the best candidate or not. See, if you want the money and support the party can bring, not to mention the place on the ballot, you will do what they want. As the saying goes, he who pays the piper calls the tune. And that brings me back to the presidential election. Since we the people do not elect the president and vice president, but electors to represent us in that election, why are we given only anonymous electors to choose from? Who are these electors? How are they chosen? These are party members that the party has chosen, who have promised to vote for their party's candidate. Why are we not given the choice of who we think would make the best electors? Why must I vote for some anonymous party apparatchik to represent me rather than Tom, Mary, or someone else I trust to do so? And since we are voting for electors who have already pledged to only vote for their party's candidate, how could we vote for an elector that would vote for someone other than the people on the ballot? How can we vote for an elector that might split the ticket if we don't even know who we're selecting to vote for president, and they are required by law to vote only for their pledged candidates? Would you vote for an anonymous member for the House of Representatives? In short, your vote for presidential electors has been manipulated and restricted in order to limit you to the candidates these private organizations want you to vote for. And we have no one to blame but ourselves and our representatives in our states. Once again, ignorance of our constitutions, both of the United States and of the several states, has led the American people to blindly follow a corrupt system. It's not the elections that are corrupt, but the way we have allowed the political parties to manipulate the election process in our states that has been corrupted. If we want to fix our election process, we need to limit the power political parties have over our elections and return choices back to we the people. Start with pressuring your state legislature to support legislation that opens up the ballot. If you are not given a plain and simple method to place anyone's name on the ballot, you need to work to change that in your state's laws. I'm not necessarily saying we eliminate party candidates from the ballot, but we need to make sure that those who have not sold themselves to a political faction are given an equal chance at the ballot box. Also, we should change state laws to require the political parties fund their own primaries. In fact, I think they should run their own primaries. The state should have nothing to do with how a private organization chooses their candidates. I would like to see more states drop this winner-take-all method of appointing electors. I agree with Madison that the election of presidential electors should be at the district level. Quoting an 1823 letter to Mr. Hay, I agree entirely with you in thinking that the election of presidential electors by districts is an amendment very proper to be brought forward at the same time with that relating to the eventual choice of president by the House of Representatives. The district mode was mostly, if not exclusively, in view when the Constitution was framed and adopted, and was exchanged for the general ticket in the legislative election as the only expedient for baffling the policy of the particular states which had set the example. Furthermore, rather than voting for anonymous pledged electors, I want to vote for real people. Let everyone who wishes to be a presidential elector be on the ballot, along with any pledge they have made as to whom they would support. Then let the people of the state decide for themselves who they want representing them in the Electoral College. I would keep the laws requiring electors to follow any pledge they make, but if a candidate for the presidential elector does not pledge, they should be free to vote for whomever they want, and the people of that district should be free to choose them. I hope now you see just how much you have been manipulated in our election process. The question is, will you continue to be the pawn of the political parties, or will you rise up and be a citizen of our republic? Will you pressure your public representatives, your public servants, your state representative, your senator to propose and support legislation to minimize the influence of political parties and return choice to the people of your state in your elections? Since your state legislators are most likely already wedded to a political party, I don't expect most of them to be very supportive of this idea. But isn't it time we remind them that they work for us, not their party? Otherwise, not only will we continue to live as serfs in our own states and country, but we condemn our children to do so as well. So have you thought that much about elections, especially presidential elections? How much control our political parties have over the election process? And why is that? Because we let it happen. Whether through laziness or malfeasance, we've allowed the political parties to dictate to us how our elections will be run. And it's caused a lot of problems. Now, hopefully you found this interesting and you'll head over to that website, constitutionstudy.com. Maybe you'll pick up a book, maybe read an article, watch a video, even consider joining. See, if you want to learn more like this, if you want to keep the Constitution study going, consider contributing through buying some of our stuff. But if you want to learn more, if you want to go deeper than just a weekly video or two, consider becoming a constitutional scholar. You can find it in the store up on the Constitution Study. It is a membership program that does a couple of things. One, it gives you access to most of my online digital media, so digital copies of the book, classes, webinars. It gives you access to all that. But it also gives you access to a community of other scholars that are interested in how our country was founded, how it's designed to work, and working to restore that. So if you're interested, head over to the Constitution Study under the store, look up Constitutional Scholar for more information. Most of all, I hope you find this interesting enough to listen to, interesting enough to share with others, interesting enough to help you consider other possibilities as we get ready for another presidential election. Most of all, I hope it will bring you back here next time for the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.